You're listening to Do That Well with your hosts, Brenda Brown and Karen Thrall, a podcast about real experiences and how to turn them into life lessons. Unscripted, honest, funny, genuine, and passionate. A series of conversations where we explore every aspect of human interaction and provoke each other to do life
So
well.
good. You're so good at doing those intros, Brenda.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is going to be quite the topic today, and I'm very looking forward to it. It's dear to my heart, and I think it's dear to your heart as well. And it's something we have been talking about quite often, not just in the last week, but we keep revisiting it, and the content is so full that we have been reluctant to actually do a podcast on it. So to bring the listeners in, we're going to talk about disagreeing. If and we always find ourselves going, oh, like if we could just, you know, be great conversationalists. And then the more you and I research, the more we research, the more we talk, we realize, oh, if we could just be great at disagreeing. And I want to start us out with a little game. And what you did this week, Brenda, is you posted a picture of camping and hoteling. Now, are those your photos? Were they taken from your phone?
They were, yeah.
Okay. And it was fun because we had some people respond and they gave their which one they like better, which we want to say thank you so much. I mean, that just made me so happy that we're starting to get responses and getting comfortable to talk via social media. And if you're not following us yet on Instagram, please do. It's Do That Well, so it's easy to find. All right. So Brenda, similar to that camping and hotel, I'm going to ask you a few more to see where you're at. And this will kind of lead us into the conversation of disagreeing and agreeing.
All
Okay.
right.
So are you a rom-com or a sci-fi movie person?
Oh, that is a really hard one, Karen. I'm gonna have to say rom-com though,
Okay.
actually.
Because I would choose sci-fi over rom-com. And
Oh.
so I was actually curious. I wonder what you would do because I don't know. But okay, so even in that, see how we are totally different on that. And if it was just me and you talking, and if that was like our podcast for today, I would so dive in and ask you a whole bunch of questions because I'd want to know why rom-com over sci-fi, and then I'd want to tell you why I didn't choose rom-com over sci-fi, and so that would become a great conversation. But we don't agree in that choice. So here's another one. Are you do you would you lean more towards street smart or book smart? Which one do you prefer? Street smart, the way you go about as a
Hmm.
professional, or book smart?
I'm gonna say street smart.
Okay, me too. Me too.
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I I enjoy the learning. I enjoy being thrown into deep water and trying to figure it out.
Yep.
And I don't want all the answers. I actually enjoy not having the answers. So I like that uncomfortable. So there we go. So we agree. We agree.
We agree
And
on something.
yeah, and in a conversation where you agree, it's very dynamic and we both agree. So we're in the same boat and we can share the same values and share the conversation. And so it's very lighthearted and it's very effortless. It's fine. Okay, here's another one. Do you love 4 seasons or 1 season? So we both live in
Four.
Southern California. Oh, okay, wow.
Immediate answer.
Yeah, yeah. And in San Francisco, you do have a bit more around you for the 4 seasons. Do you?
Yeah, a bit,
Yeah.
but I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and there were
Yes.
definitely four seasons there.
And so for me, I'm really enjoying the 1 season. And I mean, I moved to Palm Springs, so clearly I enjoy the 1 season. But I grew up in Montreal where we had very clear, distinct 4 seasons. And but I don't miss it
You
yet.
don't miss it.
I don't
Wow.
miss it. It's been 6 years in Southern California and I love it. Now it's nice to go visit. I want to go visit the 4 seasons, but I don't want to stay there.
You don't wanna be in them.
No. So there we didn't agree again. And these are when you don't agree, it's fine. You and I agreed 100% on one, but we didn't necessarily. Now
Mhm.
I'm forcing this a bit. And this is the thing with agreeing and disagreeing is that when it's casual, it's super fun to disagree because you can learn so much. And I think where it gets really tricky is when we get into our core values, into convictions, into strong opinions. And that's where it gets a little harder. However,
Yeah.
however, the same dynamics that happen in a lighthearted conversation like sci-fi and rom-com is the same formula for those really emotionally unsettling, nervous type conversations that can cause arguments. It's actually the same formula. And so today, you and I are going to do that together. And I know you have some things that you are really important to you, and I do too. And together, I think we're going to come up with a really good recipe for how to have great conversations when you disagree. I'm going to pass it to you.
I agree with you, Karen. This is going to be a good podcast.
Right?
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So, yeah, as you said, I definitely have some things that for me are really important and I think can really make or break a conversation. And I think the top thing for me is curiosity. So
Mm,
I know this is
yeah.
something we've even touched on in the past, but making
Mhm.
sure that you're staying curious and engaged and asking questions in your conversation. So if somebody
Mm,
says something and you don't agree with them on it, rather than immediately go to this defensive place or to feel like, oh, well, we don't see eye to eye on this, to ask follow-up questions. Like, I'm curious. I don't agree with you on that, but why do you feel that way? Or tell me
mhm,
more about that. I'm curious to understand your positioning on that. And seeking out more information.
mm,
Or if I'm the person, sometime I've been in a scenario where I'm seeing that the person doesn't agree with me, or they're saying, "Oh, I don't get that," or "That seems weird." And so I
mhm,
can actually choose to be curious as well. I can say, "Well, tell me what you think you heard me say. Like, let me first clarify
mhm,
that you received the message that I'm trying
mhm,
to give, and
mhm,
like let me ask you, like, why don't you agree with me? Why,
mhm.
what did I say that you don't like? Is there anything in there that
Yeah,
you liked?" And again, just
yeah.
keeping that curiosity and those questions coming so that you can get
Mhm.
more information before you jump to just, no, we're butting heads now, right and wrong,
Yeah,
yes or
yeah.
no.
And with that, we don't have to worry about the energy, because if you're sensing the energy and you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna turn this into a fight," asking curious questions is going to keep it from fighting, because you're drawing more information from the person. And I liked what you said, when you were saying, like, "Well, what part of what I'm saying don't you like?" Most of the time, people don't disagree with everything you're saying. It's not a it really truly. There are areas where they agree. It's just that sometimes they feel pressure to take a side. So for you to even say, like, "Well, what part didn't you like?" So then you can just focus on that one part instead of the whole conversation.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate that you said that. Mhm.
And what about you, Karen? What's like the top line? What's the first one that comes to you, or what's like the really important, you know the biggest?
Yeah. Okay, well, I have a few, the biggest. Um, the thing that's hard for me personally is when people assume that I agree. I don't know what to do, because I feel like I'm just stuck now. And I listen and I show interest, but I'm sad that I don't get asked if I hold the same point of view or the same thought. When I'm with somebody who'll go, "Well, that's what I think. Do you think that way? What do you think?" I'm like, "Yay." Like, now I get to participate in a conversation. So that's one of them. I would say, if everyone could not assume, just remember to say, "Okay, that was me. What about you?" And because now you're in a conversation. So I would ask, that's my ask. When If you're anybody listening, when you're talking to me, ask me, because I may have something different or something to add that that will really create a lot of good conversation, and vice
Hmm.
versa. I never want to assume someone thinks the way I do. So that's one of them.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
I really like that because it reminds me of when we did our episode on perspectives, and
Mhm.
there is this idea, right, that you don't, as you said, you don't want to assume that the other person holds the same perspective or the same viewpoint as you. So asking them what their viewpoint or
Mm,
perspective is, I
mhm,
think that's really good. I was actually just yesterday, I read this thing about how not all, or only some people, when they think in a stream of consciousness as a narrative, and other people think in more abstract ways. So, for example, if you're hungry and you want something, you might think in your brain, I'm hungry, I need to make myself a sandwich. Or you might be a person that just has an image of a sandwich and feels hunger, and that's how you know. But that blew my mind because I'm a person that has a stream of consciousness, and I had never ever thought to myself that other people might not think the same way I do. And it was
Mm-hmm.
one of those moments that reminds us, like, we are not all the same. We all have different viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
We all have different
We do.
perspectives. And asking people, what do you think? How do you see this? Like, yes, that's so,
Mm-hmm.
so essential.
Mm-hmm. Which leads me into another thought that for me that is important that I want to practice. I want to what I'm saying to you is things I'm saying to myself. And the other one I find is a little bit tricky and is it's not about right and wrong or winning losing. I'm I'm not trying to win over you or to get you to see that you're wrong. And it it's that coin. It's the two sides of the coin. You know, I'm on one side of the coin and I don't know what's on the other side of the coin because I can't see it. I'm not wired to see it. And I think if we could as humans, as brothers and sisters, you know, as American brothers and sisters or global brothers and sisters, if we could see that I'm speaking from my side of the coin. And when someone else talks and it seems so polar opposite, it seems such disagreement with me, it might not be. It's like you were saying earlier, it's a perspective. And so that thing of right and wrong and not holding on to things like they're right and wrong, because I find that's combative. I find once you pick a very strong right and wrong, it's combative and it lacks understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the second one for me personally, that it's not right and wrong, it's not win or lose. A conversation's about this is my side of the coin. What's your side of the coin?
Definitely. To piggyback on that, I agree. I agree with you here.
Oh, phew. Oh, phew. Because we were in for a fight. We were.
It's gonna get
Oh, that
hairy.
would have been bad. Oh.
But to piggyback on that, for me, that's also something that I think is so integral to having conversations. When I go to have a conversation with somebody, I never assume that I'm going to change their mind or that they're trying to change my mind. Like, I go into a conversation
Mhm.
thinking that we are both presenting information, and we're both presenting information about our viewpoint, about what we think on this topic. Let's say we're discussing rom-com versus sci-fi, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not going into this thinking, well, Karen, I'm going to convince Karen that she should be a rom-com person. Nor am I assuming that you're trying to convince me that I need to be a sci-fi person. And I think
Mhm.
keeping that in mind, that we're both presenting information, we're both learning more about what the other person thinks. And if I get enough information that my mind does change, like, cool, I'm open to that too. I am open to having my mind change, but that's not the purpose of entering into the dialogue.
Mhm. Mhm. That's not the purpose of trying to change the person's mind
Right,
or
right. The
your
purpose
mind.
isn't
Yeah.
trying to change
No,
minds. It's just
no, and I think
sharing.
that's liberating. I think that's liberating because you don't have to, like, you get to stand in your thoughts. You get to stand in your opinions and your beliefs and your convictions and share them, and you're not responsible to try to change someone else's mind. The greatest gift we can give each other is to stand confident in who I am and not feel threatened. Not feel threatened. Well, I wish I could see it the way you do. I don't. So educate me on how you think. Educate me on why. Why is that such an important piece for you?
And even if it is one of these conversations where I'm open to the fact that the new information I receive might change my viewpoint, So
Yes.
even if it's that kind of conversation, you can see where you still have to have that same curiosity, though. You still
Mhm.
have to have that same openness and the same mentality that they might be right and you might also be right.
Mhm.
Or maybe because I've learned new information now, maybe my viewpoint's changing. And
Mhm.
maybe now the what I think is right is somewhere in between. And
Mhm.
that can be okay too. So I think we're getting into this territory of this paradox that we've talked about before as well, right? We're getting into that territory of how can you allow more than one viewpoint and
Mhm.
to exist at the same time, even if they might not be symbiotic with one another.
Mhm. Yeah, that's yes. Thank you for, clarifying that. Um, the other one I really like a lot, I like this a lot, is, and I'm working on that muscle to say it more often because I think it's just so good. It's to go in saying, "I agree and I disagree." And what
Mhm.
I find I do when I'm in a tricky conversation where I'm uncomfortable, I'm really uncomfortable and I'm like, I don't think I like where this is going. What do I do? I don't know. How do I share my thoughts and keep harmony? Oh, I hope they don't get mad at me. Whatever those insecurities are, I look for the gold in the conversation. So rom-coms. If you said to me, Ken, the reason I like rom-coms is it always reminds you that love is possible. It always reminds you that love is in the air. Oh, I can that boom, and I hook into love is in the air. I like love is in the air. That's really cool. And one time, and if I can find somewhere where I agree, so, and you empower the conversation by saying, I agree with that one phrase. And then now there's harmony. And then I say, okay, but what I don't agree with is there's not enough adrenaline. There's not that rush of, where I'm sitting on the edge of my seat and there's none of that. And I kind of like a little bit of that. you know? Now I'm disagreeing on a portion, but not without, and I'm still honoring you. So I really like the practice of saying, I agree, find the thing, that phrase in that conversation that you're really connected to, and then carry on with the disagree.
And you get me thinking about how, and I don't think we have an answer for this, but I just, the question that comes to my mind is why are we drawn to be contrary? Because I do think that happens a lot. I think that when you're listening, it's almost like I'm just going to pick out the things that are and I'm going to be like, nope, nope, don't like that. Versus what you're saying, I like this idea, and I guess it ties into the curiosity of what we were saying earlier. But I like that rather than find the points where you're in disagreement, try and find those little moments, even if they're really small, that you can agree, because
Mm-hmm.
then you are putting that levity and the positivity back
Mm-hmm.
into it, even though there's disagreement happening, but you're finding these little moments where you do agree and you can keep
Mm-hmm.
moving
Mm-hmm.
forward.
Mm-hmm.
You're validating the person that you're talking to. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I know for myself personally, that is really a point. It's like a button for me when I don't feel like I'm being validated or heard in a conversation. And especially if there's disagreement, I think when you're not feeling like the other person is hearing you, or if you're not feeling like they're allowing your viewpoint to exist, then it can be so easy to go to that defensive place because they're not letting your opinion exist. So then all of a sudden you feel compelled to try
Mm-hmm.
and support it, right? So if you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
well, Brenda, like, rom-coms, no way, sci-fi is where it's at, you're just dismissing me, so now I'm even more
Dismissing, yeah.
compelled to argue or have a
Mm-hmm.
disagreement about it because I'm like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
No, what are you talking
Mm-hmm.
about? But if you say something like, okay, rom-coms aren't for me, but
Mm-hmm.
like tell me more about why they're for
Mm-hmm.
you, like now you're
Mm-hmm.
allowing my opinion to exist even though it's not the same one that you have. So can these two opposing opinions exist at the same time in harmony? and
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that's
Yeah.
important.
Mhm. And thank you for saying the whole thing about, validating, heard, and dismissed. So we have the need to be right. And I wonder, like, I feel like we kind of brushed over that one because we're still learning. Like, well, Karen, Brenda, what do you do? How do you? Well, we're trying to figure that out too. But this thing of when someone feels like they have to defend themselves, and maybe their intentions are never to be absolutely right, it's just they're not feeling heard, and so now it's like you said even earlier about now I'm defensive and I have to stand my ground when I was just trying to share my heart and where
Mhm.
I'm at. And when you said about not feeling heard, validated, and dismissed, that might be what causes, like, think about that. So instead of us going, don't be so, everything is not about right and wrong. Well, how about, hey, be careful that you don't dismiss somebody else's voice because you don't know the story behind the voice. And if you find you're getting a reaction out of yourself, it could be a story that's attached to you that's causing that reaction. That person talking is trying to share a piece of who they are, and there's a whole history pages behind it. So thank you for saying that. For us, for all of us, a call to action would be pay attention to if you're dismissive, which means, you're kind of brushing it off and maybe talking over them, shutting it down and shaking the finger and talk to the hand. Like, pay attention to your energy, because the best thing you could do when you disagree is the first thing you said was curious questions. So I really, that was good. I appreciate you telling that, Brenda. And that made me think of this being the initiator of giving the conversation back to the person. When you give your opinion in all your passion, you now you give the conversation back. Now that's me. That is me. And as you can see, I feel very strongly about it. But man, I'd love to hear you. What is you? And where are you passionate about this conversation? Like, that's very empowering as well, to actually encourage disagreement. It's okay to encourage disagreement. It's okay where, and one thing we can do with that is, okay, where do you agree with me and where do you disagree? And you actually force people to disagree. Not force, that's not the right word, but okay, you have to answer two questions. Where do you agree with me, but where do you disagree with me? Because I want to know that as well. Giving that permission, being in charge of the freedom to disagree. Oh man, that's a conversation. That's a,
I really, really like that. Like, I feel like that's my call to action. I want everybody to
Mhm.
start saying, okay, where do you agree and where do you disagree?
Yeah, wow.
Because
Mhm.
I think we need to get more used to disagreeing as
Mhm.
well, but in this way of disagreeing with levity, in this way of disagreeing with the idea that we can both be right, disagreeing with curiosity. I think that we need to practice it. That's why we're
Mhm.
doing an episode about
Mhm.
it, right? And I think I really like this, like calling it out of them, forcing people to
Yeah.
find moments to disagree so we can all practice with one another.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
with a lot of what we've been discussing, there's this idea of, not that this should come to a surprise to us or anybody that listens, because I think we often find ourselves in this place where it's finding that balance, and that it doesn't need to be a dichotomy. It doesn't need to be black or white. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be right or wrong.
Yeah.
Can it be somewhere in between? Can there be a paradox?
Mhm.
Can there be room for both? And, you know, I think that those lines of thought you can really bring into almost any aspect of life. But I do think when we're talking about disagreements, it becomes especially important,
Mhm.
because there
Mhm.
there is this, doesn't have to be right or wrong. It can just be two
Yeah.
people with differing opinions that are sharing their opinions and learning perspective.
Yeah.
They're not changing their perspective, but they're just learning new ones as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm. And how many times have you had a perspective 10 years ago that you don't have anymore?
Right.
I mean, I have so many beliefs, presuppositions that have evolved. Hundreds of where I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm evolving. And so I'm going to have a different mindset as I age and as my life changes and as my experiences changes and as I meet new people and as I have different conversations and as I study more and as I explore the world. It's going to naturally change. So I don't need to be right, because who knows where I'll be in 5 years. I have constantly been changing my mind on things. I'm sad at the times I have to go ask for forgiveness because I felt so right. That makes me sad. And I think that is why I don't want that. I don't need to be right anymore. I don't need that, because often I have to go apologize anyway years later when I realize, what was I thinking? So this whole evolution of thought is it allows us to have great conversations.
I think that, I mean, that's gold right there to
Mm.
me. Honestly, Karen, I mean, that is such a good point. Because when
Mm.
I think of my own life, I don't even agree with myself
Yeah.
like 5 years
Oh,
ago. I don't agree with my
whoa.
5 years ago self. I'm
Whoa.
embarrassed, honestly, like
Yes. Me too.
embarrassed about some of the viewpoints that I used to hold.
Me too. That is so well said, Brenda. I don't even
And
agree with
so,
myself from 5 years ago.
right? And so I think that's a
Wow.
wonderful point that you make. Like, we're always evolving and changing, always. So we can't, I think when we get too close or too tied to a way that we're thinking right now, you're only doing yourself a disservice because you're making it so that you can't grow too.
Part of why I don't want to take a right wrong posture for my life. And I look at my personal life and I go, wow, it's not worth being combative or defensive, because in a year or two, I don't even know if I'll think this way, but right now it feels so real. Like right now, this feels absolutely 100% where I stand. But when you look at my history, I don't stay long in those places. I don't. Because I'm moving and I'm learning, and everything is constantly influencing and shaping me. And I'm a sponge and I'm hungry to learn. So I know that it's important that I remember that I keep changing. And that's why I want to be someone who asks curious questions. When I disagree, it's an opportunity for me to take a learning posture, because I don't know if this Karen will be here 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's such a good point. And that is why, right, it is so important to stay curious, and it is important when you're entering into conversations to be open to the idea that maybe your mind's going to change when you get some new information, because we evolve and we grow and our opinions change, and we're always doing that. If we choose to, I suppose not
yeah.
everybody's always doing it. Hopefully they are.
What a great way to end it. Like, we will be different in a year, 2 years, a week, even like you said yesterday, this morning. And I think that's a good reminder of why disagreeing is such an enriching conversation, and for us to call each other to enjoy the disagreement and not feel afraid of it or shrink back or get angry or defensive. That if we could start enjoying them, and we hope that some of these tools can help us all be better at disagreeing.
Right, definitely. Like all of the things that we like to talk about in our podcast, because we like to tackle all the hard subjects. Um, but it is a continual learning process, and you need to be able to have an openness and compassion with yourself, and know that it's all a learning process. So if you can find that curiosity and that joy and that levity in these moments of disagreement, then hopefully it can just become another enriching experience that you're learning from,
Mhm.
rather than
Mhm.
something that keeps you up at night because you're full of anger.
Yeah.
That's what we don't
Mm.
want.
I know.
Well, I
Thank you,
agree. I think
Brenda.
that was a nice closing note, Karen. So with that, we will bid our audience adieu. I want you to say it because you actually speak French.
Adieu.
Thank you.
Adieu.
That was beautiful.
Bonne journée ou bonne soirée.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and we will be here next week on Do That Well.